This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
God's word is true. It used to be that people just took that for granted, but now it seems we must prove it with tangible evidence. And much to the chagrin of atheists everywhere, evidence is being found that proves the Bible is indeed true. And one man knows that better than anyone, and he's making several films that use the patterns of evidence to prove the Exodus and the Red Sea crossing. Filmmaker Tim Mahoney joins Michael Rood tonight for a very special episode because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live.
As they take this message out into the world.
Well, Shabbat Shalom to our fans. You know, it is good to know that not even a pandemic can stop the truth of the Bible. Filmmaker Tim Mahoney joins Michael Rood tonight for a special one-time episode about his new movie. Now, this movie, The Red Sea Miracle Part 2, The Hebrew Perspective, was supposed to come to theaters in early May, with every movie theater in the country shut down, though, because of COVID-19. Obviously, that did not happen. However, this movie is being released as an online viewing experience that you can experience now in your home. And sometimes that's even better. So Michael Rood and Tim Mahoney are going to talk more about that in just a few minutes. You may remember part one of this movie that was just before COVID-19 hit in early spring. This is now part two, The Hebrew Perspective. You're going to love it. And that is coming up in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, let's get to the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. You can see on your screen there that we are now in the fourth and final Shabbat of the fourth biblical month. We'll be able to see the new moon on Tuesday. And of course, the new moon that really counts is the one that's seen from Israel. And if you get our emails, you'll be sure to see when that report comes in, and we will tell you absolutely when the moon is sighted in Israel on Tuesday. Hopefully Tuesday, if not, then Wednesday. A few days are left in our Proclaim the Name event. What is that? That is special purchases that we made for Passover. Again, another event that didn't make it because of COVID-19. And we had purchased some special events that had special items, that is, with the name of Yehovah on them. This is the name of Yehovah scanned directly from the Aleppo Codex. You've probably seen a lot of items from A Rood Awakening with that on it. And we have some special items that we were going to offer at Passover. We didn't see you at Passover. So now we are offering them to you as a special online event. There are 5 special items, one of which being something close to my heart. I love smoothies. This is a smoothie cup with a special straw that has an agitator on the bottom and the name of Yehovah on the outside. Of course, good conversation maker. You can explain to people what that means and how you've come to your faith after seeing the light, your Hebrew roots, as it were. And also we have a name of God mug. This has the Aleppo Codex with the name of Yehovah on it, with a wooden lid and a ceramic spoon. I will be very surprised if there's any of these items left. We only have like 50, 70, 100 of each of these items. So if you don't see them on the website, sorry, they're gone. We only had a few that we were going to bring to Passover. Once they're gone, they're gone. But there's several other items available, including there's also an insulated thermal mug. This is one you can bring in your car, has the lid on it so it won't spill. That's a great item. And a genuine leather pad folio that you can put your iPad in to take all your notes and everything. Beautiful thing. Has a name of Yehovah embossed on the front. Has a full zipper all the way around. And we also have a prayer journal. It's a cute little thing with a denim around the outside. It comes with a pen and a pad, of course, in the middle. Wonderful items. Each of them are really greatly reduced. Great prices on these. Once they're gone, and you will see them just for a few more days. You can go to aroodawakening.tv/proclaim and see them all there. Now, coming up next, Michael Rood and Tim Mahoney are going to give you a preview of the Red Sea Miracle Part 2, The Hebrew Perspective, and just before that comes the Kiddush, coming up next.
The Samaritans of Yeshua's time were despised by their neighbors. But why? Who were they? Michael Rood presents The Samaritans, the little-known background story of a Gentile people whose lifestyle serves as a warning for Christians today.
You're going to find out as we dig deeper exactly where these people are coming from and how they have added to the Torah 267 significant changes so that they have a state religion.
We'll send you The Samaritans on DVD or Blu-ray when you send a love gift donation of $50 in July. Or for a love gift donation of $100, we'll send you the teaching plus an insulated Shabbat picnic bag bearing the Hebrew name of Yehovah. Or for a donation of $300, we'll send you the teaching, the picnic bag, and silver-plated bookends depicting ancient Jerusalem. Hurry, offer ends July 31st. Call the number on your screen or visit monthlylovegift.com. If you like what you see on Shabbat Night Live, you'll love the bonus episodes, now available only on the michaelrood.tv app. These bonus episodes dive deep to give you more serious study, cutting-edge content, and righteous raves you won't find anywhere else. It's Michael Rood Uncut. Sign up now to get the michaelrood.tv app free for 14 days. It's everything Michael Rood, plus all new bonus episodes you won't find anywhere else. Sign up to watch now at michaelrood.tv.
For the past 20 years, I've lived in the land of Israel, and I've had many occasions to eat in the home of Orthodox Jews, and on Shabbat, as the 2 hollow loaves were brought out, representing the double portion of manna that fell from heaven, and that we would not need to be collecting manna the next day, but his provision is there for us. And as they said the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I, of course, know the Adonai is really Yehovah. I know that. And then as they took the cup and said, Baruch atah Yehovah, Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Borei pari hagafen, I would sit at that table and I would recognize and understand that what they are doing, this is what was done from the time that the Melchizedek brought forth bread and wine to Abraham. And Yeshua said, this represents my body, which is broken for you. This cup represents the renewed covenant in my blood. As often as you do this, wherever you do it in remembrance of me. The remembrance of them are all around. And this is what the Almighty put in place for us to understand. And this is why Yeshua said, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced. We do this in remembrance of him. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to this very special edition of Shabbat Night Live. I've asked 2 gentlemen to join me as guests on the program tonight because this is a very special occasion. It was nearly 20 years ago that I met American filmmaker Tim Mahoney at a convention, and I said, you have got to get involved in this finding of the Red Sea crossing site. And as I began to explain it to him, just having come back from Nuweiba, Egypt myself, I then found out that he had already been involved in this and was asked to help promote a film that was coming out on that very issue. But I was doing a television program on it, and I said, this really deserves a filmmaker, someone that can really do this right. Little did I know that this was going to be the beginning of a 20-year project in which Tim Mahoney has come out now with several movies on the Exodus from Egypt, the Patterns of Evidence series, and he is going to join us for Shabbat Night Live tonight because he has his next movie, The Red Sea Miracle Part 2, that is now coming out, and we are going to invite all of you to join us for that showing. Now, I have to tell you what happened. This year, we were going to have Tim Mahoney at our Passover event, but the government shut down large meetings this year for Passover, and we are unable to do this. And so Tim had to make an alternate plan, but many things happened in America and and around the world since that Passover event. And so Tim sent me the new movie with the new ending, new information on it. And so this last week, I had a chance to view the movie. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I sat in my chair, and I put it on my big iPad, and I watched the movie. And at the end, there was such a turnabout in how he is ending the movie and the information that he brought, that I literally sat in my chair and the tears ran down my face. And I realized as I sat there deep in thought that the tears had completely dried, and I was just completely caught up in thought. And then I realized, I need to get up, and I'm still thinking through this. And I get up, I make myself a cup of coffee, and I'm staying there as the coffee is brewing, and the tears run down my face again. And I realized that what was being brought was so significant, so powerful, that I cannot even tell you what it was. I'm not going to attempt to. You really have to experience this movie for yourself. But I have a special guest that I brought in, Nehemia Gordon from Hebrew University. Nehemia, of course, a good friend of mine, a good friend of the ministry. He has been with us for a lot of his exploration of ancient Hebrew texts, but Nehemia Gordon has his master's degree from Hebrew University in biblical studies and also in archaeology. And so I've asked Nehemia Gordon, who has also been able to preview the movie, to join us. Nehemia, thanks for coming in and being with us on this momentous occasion.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here. My BA was in Biblical Studies and Archaeology, Master's in Biblical Studies. So when I saw this movie, and in fact, even some of the people who were interviewed in some of the earlier movies, I'm like, I had that professor. We studied his articles. These are people I was intimately familiar with, at least as far as the research was concerned. Yeah.
Well, let's. We've got Tim Mahoney joining us by way of ones and zeros on Skype. Tim, good to have you with us here, coming from beautiful northern Minnesota.
Well, it's great to be on the program again. Thanks for having me.
Well, Tim, both Nehemia and I are really excited about this. Having been able to preview this, we know that now this is going to be not coming out in theaters as it was originally planned, but it is going to be an online event, because this information can't wait to get out. Tell us about what the program is, or the procedure is now that you're going to be getting this out to the world by way of the internet, a pay-per-view, I understand.
Yes, that's correct. And, this is the first time we've ever done that as well. And obviously we had been in theaters 3 times for the first 3 films. And we were intending, as we said, to actually be at the Passover event, and then we're going to be in theaters in May. And all that changed. And ever since then, we've been trying to sort out, well, what would be the best way for us to release this? And so we've got two programs that are going on. One is that, we've decided to release it through a relationship we had with Salem Radio Network. They were always helping us with our radio advertising, and this is where Dennis Prager and others have been broadcasting. Eric Metaxas. And Eric Metaxas is actually in this film. He wrote a book about miracles. And so Eric is going to be involved with this as well. And so they have a new platform called SalemNow.com. Salem, SALEM now, NOW.com. Salem Now. And they're going to be basically launching this film on their new platform as a way to get these new films out in a different way, since many of the theaters are still struggling to get open again. So that's the plan that we have, and people can have a party at their home and bring their family, anyone who they feel safe having at their home, their immediate family or friends, and they can have a watch party. And the plan is also to have a pre-show, just like we do in the theaters, and have the event happening. It's going to be an event. This particular film is long. It has an intermission. So if you want, when we were testing it, even in our own studio, we realized that we needed a bathroom break. So we put an intermission in this film. And then we have a post program as well, of which we've got, once again, discussion at the end of the film. So it's going to be starting at, I think in the Salem Now version, which is coming out on July 24th. That's when it'll be live. I believe that one will just happen whenever you want to get it.
We got a little bit of time now for people to register. And so how do they register that? Is that going to salemnow.com and registering via that venue?
Yes, I believe they can buy their tickets. I think they can buy it ahead of time, but we'll see. But at least by July 24th, they can purchase their tickets.
Okay.
That would be one way to be able to do that. And we do have thinkers. We have a showing event on our own website at Patterns of Evidence for thinkers only. So that's going to be happening the week prior to that.
What is a thinker? How do you become a thinker? I'm a thinker.
Yeah. Well, we have it's Thinking Man Films, and so we actually have people signing up. And every week we send out a Patterns of Evidence Thinker update. And that's about archaeology, about the Bible. And we would like to have some of your work there too, Nehemia. We would think that would be that'd be great to have some thinkers from you. Some of the work, so we take a deeper look at what people are uncovering. And I think the theme of it is God's Word is true. And that's basically, a lot of people say, well, God's Word is not true. And what I've been doing, I think in a very neutral way, that's why the films are a little bit longer, is I challenge that question, is God's Word true? How do we know God's Word's true? And when people have said that it's not, I've basically tried to figure out, well, explain to me why you think that, and let's see what evidence you have. And that's how we've created Patterns of Evidence films. So, Michael, I think it'd be good to maybe show a trailer of the new film, Red Sea Miracle Part 2. Should we do that?
Let's do that now.
For a long time, the idea was that the Israelites crossed down through here and crossed the Suez. And you don't think there was a crossing at the Suez or at Aqaba?
As far as I'm concerned, they're just too deep, too difficult.
If God exists, then miracles are entirely possible because there is a God there to act.
The wind can't do it. You have to rely then on a spectacular miracle.
It's explicit. The Bible says, and the Lord sent a strong east wind which blew all night.
If you had told me that somewhere near the Sinai, wind blows and splits the water, I could find it from there.
And had you ever seen a trade wheel before?
My eye caught something. It was circular in nature.
Two wheels stand like this, with an axle in between. Circular shape. For certain it's not a coral reef.
If you've got evidence, maybe it should be certified in some way.
This was the only time that I had seen anything definitive, period.
How can we make a judgment on something we've never seen?
What you're saying, it's not wrong to look.
We need to look, but we also need to verify.
Do you think it was a larger miracle, or do you think it was a smaller miracle?
The text indicates it was very large.
A miracle is something that God does for us. He wants to get our attention.
And people actually who in our academic environment are sticking our necks out to talk about this.
The text is clear. Yahweh was at work in pushing back the water. This isn't about wind getting glory. This is about God getting glory.
You can call it the Sea of Reeds. You can call this the Red Sea. You can call it the Blue Sea. I don't care. This is Yam Suf.
Well, as you can see, once again, there's a lot of information that's going to be, sort of this tension between two ideas. In our films, we talk about I tried to figure out how do I gather together different ideas, and we're looking at that Egyptian approach and the Hebrew approach. And Nehemia, what do you think about that? Was I fair in that way in looking at those two different approaches?
I'm not sure. I would have termed it the Hebrew approach and the Egyptian approach, but I think that really does represent two approaches to the Bible, to miracles. With my background in archaeology, I see that the early archaeologists came along and their purpose was to prove the Bible by finding things in archaeology. And then there was this backlash, and the backlash was, whatever we find, it could have nothing possibly to do with the Bible. It's this reactionism. And what I love about what you're doing is you're bringing all the different opinions. You're letting everybody speak and hearing the different positions, even positions that make people who believe in the Bible uncomfortable. Certain characters and figures that I think a lot of people who are strong, ardent Bible believers are like, yeah, we didn't want to hear from that guy. And so I love what you're doing. You're letting the different positions be heard. But I would say the dominant position today and within, let's say, academic research in universities is this reactionary approach that whatever possible connection there could be to the Bible, well, it's not really connected because what are the odds we would find something from the Bible kind of thing?
Yeah.
Well, you gave an example this morning of one of your professors. The Scandinavian approach is that the Bible is basically a myth.
So there's what used to be called the Scandinavian school, but I think it's spread much further now. And the idea was that the Hebrew Bible in its entirety, from Genesis, maybe with a few exceptions here and there, was written in the Persian period, 1,000 or more years after most of the events happened. And the analogy they would bring are the legends about King Arthur, and that you would no more build British history, English history on the legends of King Arthur than you could on the Bible. And if you happen to have found a round stone table in an area where the legend says King Arthur lived, you would never say, well, that's the round table of King Arthur, right? And so this is the approach that's been now applied to the Bible. So there was this big embarrassment to the Scandinavian school in the 90s when they excavated at Tel Dan, and they found the Tel Dan inscription. And it talks about these kings from Syria who invaded Israel, and they fought against Beit David, the house of David. And the Scandinavian school was thrown into they're very, what do? We said David is like Arthur. He never existed. And they came up with all kinds of convoluted explanations that Beit David was really the name of a town, just like there's Beit Shemesh and Beit Yerach. So there was the house of, but in the context, it's clearly a dynasty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So with this, his letting these people, which, as I was looking at it, I was thinking, this is a kind of a ludicrous approach, a ludicrous explanation, but yet you let them, not only did you let them have a voice in it, you also had graphic artists to illustrate their positions on this, giving everyone a fair, even stand, and then you bring them to the Gulf of Aqaba and let that speak.
And I think that the challenge has always been that it boiled down for me as a filmmaker looking at the question of miracles. That's why we call it the Red Sea miracle. But as we noticed that in the film, one of the miracles is the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud. And there's naturalistic explanations that people try to give for these phenomena that are in the Bible, these events that happen in the Bible. And so the question then is there, for example, one idea is that Mount Sinai is a volcano, and that the pillar of cloud is the smoke coming off from the volcano that's directing them in that direction. That's where we actually talk about a kind of a combination of two ideas. One being a Hebrew location, which would be the Gulf of Aqaba, and the other being a Egyptian naturalistic approach, and we call them a kind of a hybrid approach. And so those two approaches then sort of meet together with sort of a mixture of, I think it happened at the Gulf of Aqaba, where the Bible seems to have, in fact, almost all the geographical references for the where the sea was parted if there's anything that geographical about giving us an idea, it's always pointing to the Gulf of Aqaba. And so this film, after 20 years, starts to basically explore what I started 20 years ago, Michael, when we met, which was was this sea parted? And then once again, we move into the question of, is this a deep sea or a shallow sea? Is this a marshy lake or is this a deep sea? Because then it goes back to the question of miracles again. Can God part water? And if so, how deep?
So you really got started on this really with Dr. Leonard Moeller, who was the one that took the robotic dive cameras down at the Red Sea crossing site with the magnetometers, and this is where you first got involved with it. You don't even get into that until this Red Sea Miracle Part 2, and letting his voice speak on this. You've given this a very open audience all the way.
Yes, in fact, I have a clip showing Leonard Moeller. How about if we show that?
I'd love to. Thank you.
Of course, when Pharaoh and his host came out behind them, they were quite ready to stone Moses.
It was here that Wyatt started to dive, looking for the remains of Pharaoh's chariots on the seafloor. Over time, others who learned about his search joined in the effort, including Swedish DNA research scientist Dr. Leonard Moeller. I saw Moeller in a film about this subject, and that's how I became aware of the Exodus investigation. I was impressed with his scientific approach.
In experimental sciences, we have a very standardized procedure to follow. You put up a hypothesis, you perform an experiment, you or others can repeat the experiment, you do statistics, you put it all together, you have a manuscript, and you publish it. That's the normal function for science. But if you go back in history, it's a totally different issue because we cannot repeat the experiment. But you can use scientific tools to investigate different parts of the history, and in that way you can apply science. You have air? Yeah. I don't have to open it.
No, that's all. Moeller and others continued the investigation that Ron Wyatt began. Since Wyatt first proposed Nueva Beach, it has become the most popular option for a deep sea crossing in the Hebrew approach.
Well, the other thing that I really wanted to accomplish is the inclusion of Ron Wyatt, and the challenge always has been is that whenever you talked about the Gulf of Aqaba, there were people who were very excited about it, and there are other people who said, "Oh no, I don't want to talk about that. That's that Ron Wyatt idea," and so I was trying to figure out as a filmmaker how do I tell this investigation? How do I tell the fullness of it? Because if it wasn't for Ron Wyatt, you wouldn't be looking at the Gulf of Aqaba. I believe that Ron actually was the one who started to point in that direction. And but then again, we found out that earlier. I think it was Beek also was saying that the Gulf of Aqaba was the place to look, and he was discounted and discredited for that. But so I had to find a way, of which I think we've done a good job of basically including all the different viewpoints and voices, and Ron was a very important part of that. And I think there's 35 interviews in this investigation. It's an awful lot, of people to put in. But then we have some interesting testimony from the divers, and there are eyewitness accounts that are very credible as we put into this film that I think that no one has ever seen before. And I think that to me came at the last minute. I wasn't planning on including those interviews because I didn't even know about them. I mean, I knew that they were out there, but that was like 20 years ago. And then within the last, months of making the film, I thought, I think I should follow up on this one lead. And that was this interview with Eric Lemke that we have, that he had dived with Ron, like 25 years ago when all this happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Ron Wyatt, since you brought it up. He made some claims which I think could be fairly described as fantastical. Do you believe all of the claims that he made? Or do you think some of them are true, maybe others aren't true? You talked about miracles. Some of the claims he made, not necessarily about the Red Sea crossing, but about other situations, the claim of how he discovered it involved miracles. So you're talking about miracles from 3,500 years ago that certainly mainstream academic secular scholarship by its definition rejects. And now you introduce a person who in the 20th century, in the 1980s, talks about, somebody sent me a video the other day of how when he opened up the Ark of the Covenant, there were angels who lifted up the mercy seat because it was too heavy. And so you're introducing a figure now who there are miracles, if you believe them, involved in his discoveries. So how, that adds another layer of complexity and controversy.
Well, I think as a historical filmmaker, what I would do, and as a documentary filmmaker, I would just try to unfold what happened and then get other testimonies and eyewitness accounts. The thing that I would say about that is no comment on a lot of that, because I have no idea what to say. But if you look at his life, it was interesting. I do know that he had a tremendous amount of courage to go to the places he went, suffer from being arrested or taking the risks that he took. Because I've been there and I've had challenges with my own safety there. So I can't imagine what risks that he took, driven by the need to investigate the historical credibility of the Bible or try to show a pattern of evidence for that. That's why I was really happy to be able to include and not just have a skip past it. And I think the thing that we're all looking for, and what I was able to kind of come to a consensus on, is that it's not wrong to look. And I think that this film has been accepted in a broader way, but with the understanding that it's not wrong to look. It's just that you have to verify. And I think that at the end of the day, that's really what the investigation is about, is we can look, we need to look in these different places, and I'm okay wherever it shows up. I just feel that people who say it didn't happen at all, or that you can't look, that's a whole nother, that's a different problem that they're having with the Bible.
Tim, I was really interested in the number of explorers, these Red Sea crossing miracle explorers that you brought their testimonies into this. I had no idea so many people had been involved in this and were compelled. They were driven. They got their PhDs in this very topic because they were so driven. And I see that you too were driven to explore this.
Yes, that's true. And to be quite honest, there's actually more than the ones that I showed, but you have to somewhat pick a group. But there's many people that have been really gripped by this, and you ask yourself, well, why is that, and why is it that this is important? And if you look at Exodus chapter 14, when we first started this project, back in around 2001 was when we started being aware of it and getting involved. My partner in this, business partner, David Wester, when he was reading the book of Exodus, it said that three times it says in chapter 14, verse 4, "And I will harden Pharaoh's heart and he will pursue them, but I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." And it repeats that, "and I will gain glory, and they will know that I am Lord," both also in 17, verse 17 and 18, that same phrasing. And guess what? Here we are, 3,500 years later, and guess what's happening? It says, I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen, and the Egyptians will know that I am Lord. And eventually, at the very end of the chapter, it says, and when the Israelites saw the great power the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and Moses, his servant. And, when you think, if you go to these different locations and you think about what this might have looked like, it's captivated us ever since that time, because there's no other account so spectacular as dividing water and allowing people to walk through it, and then destroying the enemy that came to pursue them. And the thing that I can't explain how I had the energy for all these years to continue to pursue this, but I know that myself, as well as many others, have had a sense that this is something we were supposed to do. And to me, I feel really rewarded that I finally got at least these 4 films, this final one in this batch, to this place. And we were able to get to the finish line. Would you like to see a little clip about God's glory, gaining glory?
Let's see it.
Yes, please.
Okay, this is Dr. Jason DeRushi.
What it describes is a big God who is orchestrating the very hearts of the Egyptian rulers. He foretells, I'm going to harden their hearts so that they will go into the sea. He pushes Egypt into the sea. He carries Israel through the sea. He causes the wind to blow, the waters to crash, decimating the entire Egyptian army. All of that in the narrative. It's not just that wind shows up and that's the only miracle. In chapter 14, verse 17, God himself declares, I will get glory over Pharaoh and all of his hosts, his chariots, his horsemen. This isn't about wind getting glory. This is about God getting glory, so that everyone will know this was indeed about him.
So, Michael, as you can see that it's important that we do not forget what God did by bringing the Israelites out of Egypt. Nehemia, I'm not sure how many times it says "do not forget," but I've heard that it's over 100. I don't know if it's 100, 150 times throughout the scriptures. It says, "Do not forget what God did by bringing you up out of Egypt." And why? My question to you, as a scholar, why was that so important that you do not forget?
It was the pivotal event in which God chose Israel as his people to be a light to the nations. God had a relationship with Abraham, but that was an individual relationship. Then with Isaac, and then with Jacob, and then even with the 12 tribes and their descendants. But we're told that when he took them out of Egypt, they became his people. So that was the pivotal event in the history of Israel. And of course, the purpose of that pivotal event, we're told from the very beginning in Exodus, is to bring them to the mountain. Right? When God reveals himself in Exodus 3, he says, the proof I'm speaking to you is that the people will come worship me at this mountain. And so to get the people out of Egypt to the mountain, that was really the central event in the history of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was thinking about this, Nehemia. Why do you believe there's so much pushback on that? And that people saying, even heads of the Department of Antiquities in Israel, saying that Mount Sinai was a literary invention. No one will ever find Mount Sinai.
Yeah, so I think there's, we go back to the Scandinavian school, which is an extreme expression of this, but it's really in some way a reaction to the earlier archaeologists who would find, something at the drop of the hat. They would say, oh, this is something from the Bible. Here's another thing to confirm the Bible. And look, let's really be honest here. There's also a political aspect here. So Jewish archaeologists in Israel generally are secular, and the ultra-Orthodox Jews see archaeologists as their enemy, and vice versa. And those are political factions within the Israeli political system. Israel has a parliamentarian democracy with proportionate representation, and the purpose of archaeology in Israel is to provide, in a sense, an alternative narrative to what's given by the ultra-Orthodox Jews. The narrative of the ultra-Orthodox Jews is the Bible and the Mishnah and the Talmud, and the archaeologists say, no, we can establish our history completely independently and separately from those books that you're pointing to as sacred books. And in some respect, that is their purpose. Take something like Israel Finkelstein, who...
he was in Tim's first movie in the Patterns of
So one of
Evidence.
his great discoveries, and I say discoveries in air quotes, one of his great claims is that the Israelites who conquered Canaan were actually people who were Canaanites themselves, who were disaffected from the Canaanite cities, went out in the countryside, lived there for a certain period of time, and then came back and reconquered the cities. And so first of all, we can see there's a certain Marxist ideology being expressed here, right? You have a disaffected class that rises up and conquers the oppressors. But also from a modern political perspective, there's this almost cliche that we as Jews shouldn't be conquerors of foreign lands. And the liberation of the West Bank is viewed as a conquest of foreign territory. And the narrative that Finkelstein presents, whether intentionally or not, is that not only are the Jews not conquerors, we're the indigenous population, right? So you don't have to believe in miracles that God gave us this land. We're the original inhabitants who were persecuted through the class struggle, ended up being kicked out of the cities and then reconquering the cities. So there are political aspects here. If they acknowledge the Bible that gives, or as acknowledge the Bible is true, it gives political power to their opponents. And if they could undermine the Bible, from their perspective, they believe it takes away political power from their opponents. I don't know that it's that different here in the American universities. Years ago, can I share this, Michael, what I told you this morning?
No, I think you can.
Years ago, I met with some New Testament professors. And because I'm Jewish, they figured they could confide in me that there was this group of professors of New Testament studies in American universities, some of them Christian universities, and they dubbed themselves the termites of the cross. And they told me their purpose was people would come in innocent, coming in from churches, believing what the New Testament said, in maybe what you might call a fundamentalist sense, right? Just taking it at face value. And they would then, through the process of higher criticism, termites, what do termites do? They eat something from the inside out. They would erode their faith by presenting them with a different narrative, which, I think they were honest. I think they believed, well, they were honest amongst themselves, right? They believed this narrative that it was all made up, but they wouldn't say that publicly because, they would lose their jobs, especially in the Christian universities. So I think there's an element of that in the academic world, especially in biblical archaeology, where if it's in the Bible, then it can't possibly be true, or if it's true, we couldn't possibly verify it. It's unverifiable by definition. And then you talk about miracles. Okay, I'll agree. Miracles are supernatural miracles, are unverifiable in some way by definition, right? Meaning we can only deal in science, and especially in material science, with repeatable, like what Muller talked about in the movie, that natural sciences deal with experiments. You put an hypothesis and you test the hypothesis. Well, how do you do that when you're dealing with history, right? Even with secular history, right? With the Roman conquest of Britain, right? Well, you can look for coins. Okay, well, maybe those coins came from merchants. There's always a way to explain something away if you really want to and need to. But definitely with miracles, how do you show a miracle using naturalistic methods of experimentation?
Well, the question of miracles was what I thought was the overarching theme of the film.
Absolutely.
And so then I asked the question, well, if they happened back at the time of the Bible, were they spectacular or were they naturalistic? And then I pull it forward. And so the film really then moves to today. And we won't give away any too much, but I do have.
Don't do that, Tim. I'm saying when you bring this in the film, it is so powerful, and that is when I realized the motto of your Thinking Man films is that I was just wrapped up in thought for the longest period of time until I had to break. I had to come in and film. I had to get back to work, but you really inspired thought in this whole process that you're doing. And I think, we all three of us men, we all come from a position of faith. We believe that the Bible is true. But yet you had a major crisis of faith that set this whole thing in motion because you were given all these naturalistic explanations, and it's like you had to address the fact that I may have been lied to. My grandmother, my mother may have had lied to me. That maybe these things aren't true, and just that cold wave of shock that hits a person that reality may not be what I always thought it was.
Yes.
There's this song that it's an old, I think Gershwin wrote it, and the song is, "It ain't necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. What you believe in your Bible, it's liable not to be so." And it's a song, it's sung in kind of a gospel style of African Americans, but the people who wrote that song were actually Jews. And it's actually based on the Jewish prayer when you come up to read from the Torah scroll, which is Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMavarach. It ain't necessarily so, except inside of a gospel style. And so you have people certainly within the Jewish world who rebelling against what they see as the Judaism of the diaspora, the Judaism where the Jews were persecuted and oppressed, and instead of just saying, hey, we want to stand up and be proud now, they actually reject religion and they reject what's in the Bible. And in the case of that song, they said, well, if we come out and just say this as Jews, no one will take us seriously. But if we put it into the mouth of a gospel singer, well, it'll be taken a lot more spiritually, because we know, meaning based on their stereotype, that African Americans are spiritual. And so it's a way of kind of masking it and hiding their way of undermining the faith. But I loved what you talked about miracles, because look, in Maimonides was the great Jewish thinker of the 12th century. To this day, he's considered one of the luminaries of the Jewish faith. And he, early in his career, said that all miracles must have a natural explanation. And as he grew older, he came to the conclusion that if you deny supernatural miracles, you're denying the Bible. So here's a man within his own walk who actually changed over time. And what you find today is there'll be Jews who will cite the early Maimonides, and there'll be other Jews who cite the later Maimonides, and everybody can find in him something that supports their position. I think we have to admit some miracles in the Bible were purely naturalistic in some ways, meaning, like, think of the story of Esther, right? Esther doesn't even mention the name of God, yet clearly it's a series of miraculous events where the miracle is the timing. It's not that something in nature was suspended. The miracle is that person was in that place at the exact right time, and then this king couldn't sleep, and they read him this exact story of the thousands of stories they could have read him. So I think the Tanakh has both types of miracles, but I have no question that the supernatural miracle, the one where the laws of nature are suspended, where the eyes of the prophet's disciple are uncovered, and he sees the angels out in the distance and that they're going to fight then the Syrians. I believe in those miracles as well.
Yes. Well, I think that was what I was exploring in this, and I'm not to say that there's not naturalistic causes that God works within, but there are times when you can't get around the fact that there's just not normally a pillar of fire floating over a group of people, leading them in the wilderness. And there's the times when the water is parted, and it says it was like walls to them to the left and the right. Well, that doesn't sound normal. That sounds not natural, but supernatural. And that's what we ended up exploring, with this. And Michael, I've got one last clip I'd like to share with you. C.S. Lewis, he was an atheist. And later on, he became a person of faith, and he wrote about miracles as well. And this, I had the opportunity to go to England and do a recreation, and went to the very location where he and J.R. Tolkien sat. And so here's a clip about miracles.
Oxford professor C.S. Lewis had an aversion to God and miracles as a young atheist in the university. He would later change his mind and become one of the most influential voices for Christianity in the 20th century. He and his good friend, fellow Oxford professor J.R.R. Tolkien, author of The Lord of the Rings, would often talk about the deep ideas in the fantasy worlds they created and their connection to our own.
You see, Tollers, our fantasies must show that there is something quite outside this world of ours, especially in this age of machines and artificial environments which we have made for ourselves. Goodness gracious, it's becoming hard enough to gain glimpses of the natural world, let alone the supernatural one to which it points.
Absolutely, Jack. True magic is the power to do good.
I am convinced that miracles are a retelling in small letters of that very same story that is written across the world in letters too large for some to see.
So as you can see, there are things that, God says the heavens declare the glory of God. And I think that there are some things that we cannot explain. And I know as I continue to do patterns of evidence films, we're going to continue to go on from here to Mount Sinai. So the next film is once they cross the sea, we talk about the fact that, well, where did they go? And this is where we're going to look at the different mountains that they could have gone to. And we're going to look at a number of them. And we're going to see, well, where does the pattern show up best? And is there a pattern that can be seen at those mountains? So once again, I want to remind people that they can see this film now streaming on salemnow.com. Salemnow.com is where we'll be, moving forward for a while. And then once again, if they want to know about our other films, they can go to patternsofevidence.com.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. Thanks for being with us. Nehemia, thanks for joining in and being part of this momentous occasion. And we look forward to getting this word out so that other people can experience the Red Sea miracle. And I'm really looking forward to getting to Mount Sinai with you. I know this is, I know that you have risked your life. You were over there with Jim and Penny Caldwell. There's a lot of miracles that all work together. Not miraculous miracles, but in timing, in provision that have happened so that you could tell this story. And now after 20 years, I thank you. I praise Yehovah for his faithfulness to you in leading you all these years, because I've seen the hand of the Almighty work in your life, and I am so happy to be able to help get the message out and get this message in front of the world. Thank you, brother.
Yep, thank you very much.
Well, Torah fans, You've got just a short time to get registered. Go to salemnow.com, get your tickets, invite your friends and family over, and show this to them. It was the last film that was in the theater. We had well over 30 people from my community, a retirement community where I live, came out to it. And during the break, the intermission, we were all talking. We were just having such an exciting time there because they were all unified in wanting to understand this and wanting to see this evidence. And when Tim brought this evidence forth, it was a firestorm, and the fellowship continues on to this day. I walk down the streets of the community, people are still talking about this, and so now I get to share with them this online event. Some of them will be at my house, other people are going to be in their own homes. Invite everyone you know, your friends, your enemies, everyone to engage in the Red Sea Miracle Part 2, and then we're going to get ready to go to Mount Sinai. So, Tim, thank you. Nehemia, thank you for being with us. And again, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. We'll see you next week. Shalom, Torah fans. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Tap the subscription button and the bell icon, and I promise to update weekly with in-depth biblical research. Be sure to download the new michaelrood.tv app for both mobile and home devices for even more commercial-free content.